I had never been so sure of something in my life as I was when I saw the police standing at my doorstep. There was no warning, no preamble, just the sharp rap of the doorbell, and then the hollow silence as I opened it. And standing there, under the harsh fluorescent light of the morning, was Sarah, my best friend, the person I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. But her face was twisted with something I had never seen before, pure, unfiltered hatred. "Taylor, you're coming with us," one of the officers said, his voice calm but firm, like this was just another regular day for him.
But it wasn't for me.
I stood there, frozen, trying to process what was happening. Sarah was standing behind him, her arms crossed over her chest, a smug little smirk playing on her lips. She looked different. I couldn't place it, but there was a coldness in her eyes that I had never noticed before. That was when I felt the first stirrings of panic in my chest. "Is this some kind of joke?" I managed to say, my voice shaking despite my attempts to stay composed. "What's going on?" "She's accusing you," the officer said, glancing over his shoulder at Sarah. "Accusing you of fraud, Taylor. And we need to take you in for questioning." My world tilted on its axis. Fraud? I couldn't even process it. What the hell are you talking about? What did I do? I looked at Sarah, my heart pounding as I saw her for the first time, really saw her, as though a veil had lifted from my eyes. Her face wasn't one of someone concerned, or even someone I could trust. It was the face of someone who had just pushed me to the edge of a cliff and was watching me fall. Sarah stepped forward then, the corner of her mouth curling into a sneer as she spoke. "You don't remember, do you, Taylor? All those bills piling up? The ones you kept ignoring, the ones you never paid? It's your fault we're in this mess. I'm just doing what's necessary to make it right." I felt the words hit me like a slap to the face. "What?" I whispered, barely able to process the meaning of what she was saying. "Sarah, what the hell are you talking about? We've been friends for years. You know I've been struggling with the house payments. I didn't mean for this to happen." But Sarah's face remained hard, her eyes cold. "You think I haven't been covering for you all this time? You think I didn't know you were sinking deeper and deeper into debt? And then you just kept pretending everything was fine. I didn't want to do this, Taylor, but I have no choice now." She turned to the officer, her voice filled with false sweetness. "She's been hiding the truth from you. She's been hiding the fact that she's been gambling away the money that should have gone to those bills. She's been taking loans and not paying them back. All that debt, that's all on her. It's all her fault." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The air felt thick and suffocating as Sarah's words rang in my ears, each one louder and more destructive than the last. Fraud? Gambling? Loans? None of it made sense. But there she was, the person I trusted most in the world, standing there like she was the victim, like I was the one who had wronged her. "Are you seriously going to let her do this?" I asked, my voice trembling. I was pleading now, desperate for some kind of sense to emerge from this nightmare. "You know I didn't do any of that. I've been doing everything I can to pay the bills, and you—" I turned on Sarah again, my eyes wild with disbelief. "You're the one who took the money from the account, aren't you? You were using my name, weren't you? I trusted you, Sarah. I thought you were my friend." She didn't flinch. She didn't even look guilty. "I didn't steal anything. You're the one who put yourself in this mess. You're the one who got too comfortable and thought you could escape the consequences." Sarah took a step back, her eyes gleaming with something dark, something I couldn't understand. "And now, I'm just making sure that the right thing happens. The house is mine now. It's time to pay for what you've done." The officer didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. He was already convinced. I was in shock. How had everything turned so quickly? How had Sarah, my best friend, the person who knew my every secret, my every fear, managed to turn my entire life into a lie? As I stood there, paralyzed by the weight of her words, I realized there was no way I was walking out of this without a fight. But it was too late. Sarah had already pulled the trigger, and I was left standing there alone, while the police took me away. The life I had worked so hard to build, everything I thought I knew about the people I trusted, had shattered in an instant. I didn't know what to do, what to think, or where to go from here. But one thing was clear. Sarah wasn't going to get away with this. I don't remember much about the ride to the station. The interior of the police car was cold, the kind of sterile coldness that made my skin crawl. My mind was spinning, unable to process the gravity of the situation. My body was shaking, but I couldn't tell if it was from fear, anger, or just the crushing weight of betrayal. Every time I looked out the window, I expected to see my life, my house, everything I had worked for, fading away in the rearview mirror. Instead, all I could see was Sarah's face, the smug satisfaction written all over her like she was getting some twisted revenge. When we arrived at the station, the officers led me through a sterile corridor, and I could hear the distant hum of voices from behind closed doors. A few officers glanced my way as I was escorted into a small, windowless room. They didn't look at me like I was innocent. They didn't look at me like I was someone they needed to help. No, they looked at me like I was already guilty. The officer who had spoken to me earlier, Officer Dalton, sat across from me, his posture stiff, his face unyielding. He didn't ask me to sit down, he just stared at me, waiting for me to speak. I wasn't sure what he wanted me to say. How could I explain something I didn't even understand? What the hell is going on? I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper, my throat dry. What did Sarah tell you? She's lying. You have to believe me. Officer Dalton didn't respond right away. Instead, he slid a stack of papers toward me, his eyes cold as they met mine. Do you know what these are? He asked, his voice emotionless. These are your financial records. They show a significant amount of unpaid loans. Not only that, but there are several transactions from an account that was in your name. Transfers to an offshore account, cash withdrawals, and payments to unverified entities. You've been hiding a lot, Ms. Ward. I felt my heart stop for a moment. I had no idea what he was talking about. Offshore accounts? Loans? I could barely keep up with my regular bills, let alone hide money somewhere. But the way he looked at me, with that quiet, knowing stare, made me feel like a criminal, even though I had no idea how any of this could be true. Sarah? Sarah is the one who was handling the finances. She was supposed to take care of the bills when I was busy with work. She promised me everything was fine. She was the one who I trailed off, unsure of how to explain the chaos of the last few months. I had been so caught up in trying to keep my head above water. I hadn't noticed the slow, creeping disaster happening right under my nose. Officer Dalton leaned forward, his expression hardening. Ms. Ward, I'm not interested in hearing about how things went wrong between you and your friend. What matters now is the evidence. The transactions are in your name. We need to know what you did with the money. I shook my head, my mind scrambling for an explanation, but nothing made sense. How could this be happening? How could Sarah, my best friend, have done this to me? I trusted her with everything, and now it felt like I was standing in front of a judge, defending myself against a crime I didn't even commit. I didn't do any of that, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. Sarah has been hiding things from me. She was the one who was pulling the strings. She's the one who's been using my name to cover up her mess. Dalton didn't seem convinced. He just stared at me, unmoving. It's your name on the paperwork, Ms. Ward. It's your signature. And we've got witnesses who say they saw you withdrawing large amounts of money from the bank. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I tried to recall any moment where I had done something that could confirm this. I hadn't touched any of the money. I hadn't even known about the accounts or the loans. Sarah had always been the one to deal with the finances. She had been the one who insisted she would take care of everything. I trusted her. Damn it, I trusted her more than anyone else in my life. But now, all that trust felt like it was evaporating into thin air. But the loans, the withdrawals, I stammered, trying to piece everything together. Sarah, she was the one who was handling the finances. I didn't sign any loans. I didn't take out any money. I swear. Officer Dalton's eyes narrowed. Then why is your signature on the documents? I don't know. I almost shouted, frustration surging through me. I didn't sign anything. I didn't do any of this. Sarah, I don't know what she's been doing, but she's framing me. She's making it look like I'm guilty of something I didn't do. Dalton let out a sharp sigh, rubbing his temples, as if he was dealing with a particularly tiresome case. We've been investigating this for a while, Ms. Ward. Your story doesn't add up. And we've got more than just your signature. We've got bank statements, online transaction logs, and even security footage that shows you accessing the account. You're in a lot of trouble here. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. Every word that came out of Officer Dalton's mouth felt like it was pushing me deeper into a hole I couldn't climb out of. It didn't matter how many times I tried to explain myself. The evidence seemed to be stacking up against me. And then, just as I thought I couldn't sink any lower, Dalton dropped the bomb. We also have a witness who says they saw you arguing with Sarah the night before the bills went unpaid. They heard you threaten her. His voice was steady, almost clinical. So tell me, Ms. Ward, why should I believe you over all of this? I felt the blood drain from my face. I had no idea who he was talking about, but the idea of someone hearing me argue with Sarah, and worse, the accusation that I had threatened her, sent my mind into overdrive. I couldn't remember the conversation, the argument.
What had happened that night?
Had Sarah staged something to make it look like I had turned on her? I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. The weight of it all was too much. I had no idea how deep Sarah's betrayal ran, but it was clear that whatever she had done, she wasn't stopping now. And I was stuck in the middle, trying to figure out how to survive. Officer Dalton leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. We'll see how this plays out, but don't think we don't have enough to put you away for a long time, Ms. Ward. I didn't have an answer for him. Nothing I could say would change what had already been set in motion. All I could do was wait, and pray that somehow, someway, the truth would come to light before it was too late. I spent the next few days in limbo, a constant cycle of anxiety and confusion. I kept replaying everything in my head, every conversation, every moment I had shared with Sarah, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. But no matter how many times I searched for answers, I only came up with more questions. The police had already begun their investigation, and every piece of evidence seemed to stack higher against me. The bank records, the loans, the supposed witness who had heard me threaten Sarah. None of it made sense. How could I have done something I didn't remember? And why was Sarah doing this? What was her endgame? I knew I had to do something. I couldn't sit idly by and let this destroy my life. I started reaching out to people who might know something, anyone who might have seen something that could prove my innocence. But when I tried to talk to the few mutual friends Sarah and I still had, they just shrugged me off. Some of them were hesitant to get involved. Some of them acted like they couldn't pick sides. It was like everyone was just waiting for the dust to settle, not realizing that I was the one left in the wreckage. Then, on the third day after my arrest, when things were at their darkest, I got a call. It was from Mark, a friend of Sarah's. He and I had never been close, but I knew him well enough to know that he didn't like drama. So when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if he was just another one of Sarah's people trying to play both sides, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I answered, keeping my voice guarded. "Taylor," Mark said, his tone urgent, almost breathless. "Listen to me. I don't have much time, but I need you to meet me. I've got something that could help you." "What are you talking about?" I asked, still unsure whether I could trust him. "What could you possibly have that would help me?" "Everyone's against me, Mark. Even you, it seems. So what's the point?" He didn't respond right away, and for a second, I thought he had hung up. Then I heard him exhale sharply. "I didn't want to be involved, but what Sarah's doing, it's wrong. I've seen things, Taylor. I didn't know what was going on at first, but now I see it. You're being set up." My pulse quickened. "Set up? What the hell are you talking about?" "Sarah's telling everyone I'm guilty of fraud. That I've been gambling, stealing, doing God knows what." "What do you know about this?" Mark was silent again for a long moment, and then he spoke, his voice low and urgent. "I don't know the whole story, but I know Sarah's been hiding a lot of things. Things she didn't want anyone to know. She's been pulling strings for a while now, and you've been the target. I didn't want to believe it at first, but after everything I've seen, I know what's happening. You're not the one in trouble, Taylor. She is. I didn't even know how to respond. My mind was racing as I processed what he was saying. What do you mean she's hiding things? What's she been doing? There's a file, Mark continued. A big one. I don't know everything that's in it, but I know Sarah's been involved in some shady stuff for a while. There's a lot of money that's gone missing, and it doesn't add up. I've seen her taking out money, more than she should have, without telling anyone. I think she's been embezzling funds, not just from you, but from others too. She's been manipulating people, playing them against each other. And now, she's trying to frame you for it. The words hit me like a freight train. I felt lightheaded, dizzy. I couldn't believe what Mark was saying, but something in my gut told me he wasn't lying. I remembered the way Sarah had acted the past few months, her sudden detachment, her coldness, her refusal to let me get involved in the finances.
It all made sense now.
She had been setting me up.
But why?
I need you to show me this file, I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. Where is it? I need proof, Mark. I need to know what's going on. I'll text you the address. Meet me tonight after dark. But be careful, Taylor. Sarah has her eyes everywhere now. She's got people watching. He hung up before I could say anything else. I stood there for a moment, staring at my phone, trying to process everything Mark had told me. I had always thought Sarah was just a little careless with money, a little disorganized. I never imagined she was capable of something like this. Embezzling? Framing me? It didn't make sense. But I couldn't deny the pieces that were starting to fall into place. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, my mind racing with possibilities. I needed to meet Mark. I needed that file. It could be the key to everything, the proof I needed to expose Sarah for what she really was. I didn't know what I was walking into, but at that point I didn't care. I was desperate. I couldn't let Sarah get away with this. Not after everything she had put me through. By the time night fell, I was standing at the address Mark had sent me, a small, run-down building in the middle of nowhere. My heart was pounding in my chest, my eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. I didn't know if Sarah had people watching me, but I couldn't take any chances. I approached the building cautiously, trying to make myself as invisible as possible. When I reached the door, I knocked softly, and a moment later, it opened. Mark was standing in the doorway, looking around nervously. He ushered me inside quickly, locking the door behind us. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice tense. "She's going to know soon enough that I'm helping you."
I didn't care about that.
I needed to see the file. I needed to know what Sarah had been hiding. Mark led me to a small table where a folder was sitting. It was thick, the edges worn from being handled. He pushed it toward me, and I felt my hands shake as I opened it. Inside were pages of bank statements, financial transactions, and emails. Everything was there, evidence of Sarah's manipulation, her involvement in money transfers, loans that had never been reported. But there was one document that caught my eye. It was a receipt for a wire transfer, a large sum of money sent from one of my accounts to a foreign bank. I didn't recognize the name on the account, but the amount was staggering. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. I looked up at Mark, my mind spinning. What is this? What does it mean? Mark didn't say anything for a moment. He just stared at the paper, then looked back at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and fear. "This is the beginning of everything, Taylor. Sarah's been planning this for months. But I think we've got her." I sat there, staring at the receipt, trying to comprehend what I was looking at. The numbers blurred together as I flipped through the pages of the file, but the realization hit me with the force of a punch. Sarah had done more than just take money from me. She had orchestrated a plan to drain me dry, using my name and manipulating everything around me to cover up her tracks. But this wire transfer, this one was different. The amount was too large, and it was transferred to an account I didn't recognize. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the one that connected everything I had been trying to figure out. "You've got to help me," I said, my voice shaking as I looked up at Mark. "If we don't expose this now, Sarah's going to get away with everything. She's going to ruin me. I'll lose everything, Mark." Mark was pacing back and forth, his eyes darting to the door every few seconds like he was waiting for someone to show up. "We don't have much time," he muttered, as if trying to convince himself more than me. But you're right. We can't let her win. She's been running this game for too long, and it's time someone stopped her. I could see the nervousness in his eyes, but I also saw something else, determination. He wasn't going to back out now, not after everything that had happened. But what was our next step? How could we take down Sarah when she had already set everything in motion? She had the police convinced. She had everyone around us believing I was guilty. She was playing the role of the victim so well that I could almost hear the applause in the background. You said you've seen her take money before, I said, trying to piece things together. How many people has she done this to? How many others is she involved with? Mark hesitated. He ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. I don't know, Taylor. I wish I could tell you, but I don't have all the answers. I've seen her move money around, manipulate accounts, and I've watched her lie to people. I didn't think much of it at first, but now it's all making sense. She's been using you, taking advantage of your trust, and now she's playing everyone against you. I couldn't help but feel a rush of anger. I had trusted Sarah with everything. She had been my best friend, the one person I thought would never betray me. But the truth was too clear now. She had been plotting for months, waiting for the perfect moment to set her plan into motion. And now I was stuck in the middle of it, fighting to clear my name while she tried to walk away scot-free. I need to go to the police, I said, standing up abruptly. I need to show them this. I need to make them see the truth. Mark's eyes widened, and he grabbed my arm, stopping me before I could move. No, you can't go to the police yet. They're already convinced you're guilty. You need more evidence. You need to prove that Sarah has been behind all of this. If you go to them now, they'll just use this as more proof that you're lying. I pulled my arm away from him. Then what the hell do you expect me to do? Sit here and wait for her to take everything from me? Mark was silent for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, more measured. I have an idea, but it's risky. It might not work, but it's the only chance you've got. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean, risky? We need to get Sarah to slip up, Mark said, looking around the room like he was making sure no one was listening. We need to get her to admit what she's done, and we need to catch her in the act. If we can get that on tape, or if we can get someone to witness it, then we'll have enough to bring her down. But we have to be careful. If she catches on to what we're doing, she'll bury us both. The idea of confronting Sarah directly terrified me. I wasn't sure I had the strength to face her, not after everything she had done to me. But I had no other choice. I couldn't let her get away with this. How do we do it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We have to lure her out, Mark explained. We know she's been hiding things, and we know she's been moving money around. But what we don't know is who else she's been working with. If we can get her talking, maybe she'll slip up. Maybe she'll reveal who else is involved. I wasn't sure what Mark was getting at, but I didn't have time to question it. My head was spinning with all the possibilities, and the urgency in his voice made it clear that this was our only shot. Okay, I said, steeling myself. Let's do it. Let's catch her. Mark pulled out his phone and quickly typed something before holding it out to me. This is where she'll be tonight, he said, his voice tense. I've been tracking her movements. She's been meeting with someone from the bank. I think she's trying to cover her tracks. If we show up at the right time, we can get the evidence we need. I stared at the address on the screen. It was a small office building on the outskirts of town, tucked away behind a row of abandoned shops. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It didn't feel right, but it was our only chance. Let's go, I said, grabbing my coat. This ends tonight. We drove in silence, the weight of what we were about to do hanging over us. The plan felt reckless, dangerous even, but I had no other option. The only thing I could do now was hope that Mark's idea would work, that we could expose Sarah for the liar and manipulator she was before it was too late. As we pulled up to the building, I could see Sarah's car parked outside. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. There was no turning back now. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, but nothing could calm the fear that was rising in me. We do this fast, Mark whispered as we stepped out of the car. If we mess this up, we're done. We walked toward the building, every step heavy with anticipation. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, but I knew that once we went inside, everything would change. It was either we caught Sarah in the act, or we lost everything. When we reached the door, I gave Mark a nod, and he pushed it open. The room was dimly lit, the faint sound of voices coming from the back. We moved quietly, carefully, trying to stay hidden in the shadows. My breath caught when I saw Sarah sitting at a table with a man I didn't recognize. She was talking to him in low, urgent tones, her body tense as she flipped through a stack of papers. "This is it," Mark whispered. "Now or never." I nodded, my heart racing. This was the moment we had been waiting for. If Sarah made one wrong move, if she said one thing that could expose her, it was over. We were about to find out just how far she had gone to destroy me. My pulse raced as I crouched behind the stack of crates, trying to steady my breathing. Mark was beside me, equally tense, his eyes fixed on Sarah and the man sitting across from her at the table. I could hear their conversation, the low murmur of their voices, but I couldn't make out the words. It was maddening. Every second felt like an eternity as I waited for Sarah to slip up, to say something that would confirm everything I had feared. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. A confession? A careless comment? Something that would tie all the loose ends together and prove once and for all that she had been manipulating me. I glanced at Mark. His face was pale, his brow furrowed in concentration. We both knew that we couldn't mess this up. If Sarah realized we were here, if she even suspected that we were recording her, everything we had worked for would be lost. She would bury us both under a pile of lies and deception. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing on me, the pressure to get this right. There was no room for mistakes. "Stay calm," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible. "We just need one good moment. One slip up, and we can take her down." I nodded, though my stomach was twisted in knots. Every instinct in me screamed that we were doing something dangerous, that this could backfire in ways I couldn't predict. But there was no going back now. This was our only chance. Sarah shifted in her chair, and I saw the man across from her hand her a document, a stack of papers that she began to flip through. My eyes narrowed as I focused on the conversation. I had no idea who this man was, but I didn't need to know. What mattered was what Sarah was doing here. Why was she meeting with him? What was she hiding? "Do you have the accounts ready?" Sarah asked, her voice low, guarded. "We need everything to go through tonight. I don't care if we have to push the payments through manually. The sooner this is done, the better." I felt my breath catch in my throat. Push the payments through manually? What payments? I couldn't make sense of what I was hearing. Sarah was acting like she was in control, like she was orchestrating something much larger than I had realized. She had been working behind my back, using my name, my trust, to cover her own tracks. And now, she was making deals with people I didn't know, people who were probably just as corrupt as she was. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about her entire scheme, her entire web of lies, and I was tangled right in the middle of it. The man nodded, flipping open a folder of his own. "Everything is ready. I'll send the last transfer once you sign the authorization forms. The paperwork's been cleaned up. No one will know the difference." Sarah's hand hovered over the papers, but she paused, her eyes flickering to the door, her expression turning suspicious. My stomach dropped. Had she sensed something? Had she realized we were here, watching her? I held my breath, not daring to move, not daring to make a sound. "You sure everything's in place?" Sarah asked, her tone sharp. "I don't want any mistakes. Not now." The man leaned back in his chair, confident. "It's all in order. This is your clean break, Sarah. You're done with all of this. No more debts. No more problems. Once this transfer goes through, you'll be free." Free. The word echoed in my mind, and I felt a surge of disgust. Sarah wasn't just trying to ruin me. She was trying to escape the consequences of her own actions. She was using me as a pawn, hoping that I would take the fall while she walked away with everything. She had been planning this for months, building a network of lies and manipulation, and now she thought she could just wipe it all away. But I wasn't going to let her. I grabbed my phone from my pocket and quickly tapped it, sending Mark a signal. He nodded, his hand instinctively moving to his own phone. We were ready. This was our moment. As Sarah signed the papers, the man handed her a pen, his face unreadable. Once this is done, you can walk away from all of it, he repeated, his voice taking on a smooth, almost rehearsed tone. We'll make sure everything goes smoothly. You'll be untouchable. My hands clenched into fists as I watched Sarah sign her name, sealing her fate. This was it. This was the proof I needed. If we could get her to admit what she had done, if we could show that she had been involved in these fraudulent transactions, we would have her. We would expose her for everything she had done. But as Sarah placed the pen down, something unexpected happened. The man leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. There's one more thing you should know. The wire transfer to your offshore account? It's already been flagged. Someone's been asking questions. The authorities might be onto you. Sarah froze, her fingers trembling as she gripped the papers in front of her. What do you mean? Who flagged it? The man looked around the room, his eyes darting nervously. It's not a big deal yet, but you need to move quickly. You don't want to get caught up in anything that could ruin this deal. It's already starting to raise some red flags. I felt my heart race. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Sarah's own actions, her greed, were starting to come back to haunt her. She wasn't as untouchable as she thought. I knew that now. The walls were closing in on her, and all we had to do was push a little harder. Don't worry, Sarah said, her voice suddenly cold, calculating. I'll take care of it. I always do. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'll handle the transfer tonight. I'm not going to let anything stop me now. The man didn't protest. He just stood up as well, offering a curt nod. I'll be in touch. Don't let anyone trace anything back to you. Remember, this is your final chance. I felt the blood drain from my face as I realized what was happening. Sarah wasn't just covering her tracks anymore. She was preparing to disappear. She was going to vanish, leaving nothing behind but a trail of lies and ruined lives. She thought she was safe, that she could get away with it all. But I couldn't let her. As they walked toward the door, I stood up, motioning for Mark to follow me. We had everything we needed. The evidence, the confession, the damning words. It was time to end this. We stepped into the hallway, following them quietly, staying out of sight. I could hear Sarah's voice in the distance, but I didn't care. The moment of truth had come. We had everything we needed to bring her down. When we reached the exit, Mark turned to me, his eyes wide. You sure about this? Once we go to the police, it's over for her. I nodded, my heart heavy. It's over for her either way. But it's over for me too if we don't. I took a deep breath and stepped into the night. The world felt heavier now, but it was a weight I was ready to bear. It was time to stop running. Time to face the truth. Time to make Sarah face the consequences of her own actions. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the flicker of hope,